meeting. We are immediately going to go into a hold pattern. I'll get it back.
year or so, we've now bonded money, and part of that bond issue is for paving. So, in FY '24, we're going to start coming back with our own money in paving. And then the ABS transfer, the Ashland Bus System transfer, and the FTA has been very generous, and we're not putting over on a half. So that's going to go up. I say all that to say this, that's probably about net out about $810K per year. So we would move through the 3.4 million in about 4.9 years. And to follow up on that, in that 4 years, I would anticipate growth towards the east end to actually counterbalance some of that. So I say all that to say I think the fund balance is in great shape.
So the 47 days of operating expenses is a big number?
That is a very good number. I would like to see us move that down some. That's just my personal opinion to spend it around the whole taxpayers' dollars. But good to you. On page 5, Philip, again, we're talking individual funds now. Right now to my bill is $13.4 million. We have a debt service of $1.7 million or 5.2%. And you can see some of the bonds that we have both coming about 10-15 million bonds, million out and between the other bonds. Line of all is unfunded police and fire pension, $1.2 million. Michelle and I was just talking last night. We have the opportunity. The 1.2 amount is expressed in the future amount of the net present value of that would be a little less than $1 million. We could go ahead and fund that at about $973,000 over the next 5 years. I think that's something that
I would love to see us, because for as long as I've been in office, and probably you, we've had this unfunded liability. So if we have the means to mark off something that has been unfunded liability for so many years, I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. It would actually come out of that 3.4 million I talked about before, so I think that's the appropriate thing. But it's appropriate.
You don't have to make that transfer every year either. I like that a lot, and it's been around forever. It's been really fun, so it has not since.
It's got some, we have 12 retirees right now. That just get a little bit more. These are old pension funds. You just got people that's.
I just don't like having a liability out there that may get. We don't have the ability to fund, and now we have the ability. So the percentage of liabilities. The total percentage of unfunded liabilities to budget is it
That is just that $172,000. That's the percent of expenditure out of the total general fund budget.
So you said $900,000 to fund that out of this?
Yes.
I'm keeping track of things before, as I have some thoughts later.
I mean, it's almost $1,980,000, something. But
for my calculation, I'm going to be down to 2.4. That works. Thank you.
Okay. Salary and benefits for the general fund is $20.4 million or 60.1% of the budget. Expenses 5.7 or 16.9. Capital outlay, that's in the capital purchase improvement fund, Fund 603, and we will cover that in the latter fund. Again, I want to point out Kentucky retirement, $5 million, $5.08 million. Well, I serve on the board. I spoke with Brent Brown, who's the director of the airport, and one of the things that they're trying to do is focus on having a matching grant funded with all the beneficiaries of the airport or all the surrounding communities. We are the largest city in Kentucky that they serve, and I know that Ohio cities and counties have contributed. It's a one-time deal. It's also a one-time deal to get another city. And I know that one of our biggest challenges as we shrunk with our top-tier employers was the loss of service to some of these cities, especially maybe even gateways to the West Coast. I think it makes us more marketable, and I think it's something as a city we would be remiss not to do, especially knowing that we are on an upswing economically. I don't know how you all feel, commissioners, any one time? Yeah.
I don't have any issue with it. I think we need to support that airport in any way that we can, and especially maybe for our people, connectivity outside of here is important as well.
They are. I have confirmation that the county has committed in their budget. Wardens County, Ohio has committed. South Point has committed. Huntington has committed. Canova. Yeah, yeah, and I think it's important that the largest city in Kentucky that they serve support this, because we do need service back in that tri-state.
Yeah, I think that's an investment, investments. My only question would be, is it for certain that they're going to get them? I'm sure it's not for certain.
It's not for certain, and it's a matching grant, it's a federal grant, and they did, I don't know if you remember, they did come to speak to us to kind of give us an overview. I personally asked them to come so that you all could get some input on this before we made a decision.
I just have a logistics question.
Sure.
If they don't get it, what, do they have plans for those funds, or will they be returned? Do you know how that works?
I don't.
I'm just curious.
I don't, but I can find that out. I can get that from
Well,
Brent.
like I said, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good investment. It's good for everybody.
I'm sure if they don't meet the goal for the match, I think it was like $250K. So then obviously,
The match was,
I would assume the funds would be returned.
if it's $1 million, how much are they drawing?
Well, I think it was a $250,000 grant, so, and they're even asking the private sector for support. They're asking companies that would benefit, like the marathons, like King's Daughters, all the big employers to participate as well. They have to be able to come to the airlines to show them, not only are the local governments committed, but these entities that have a lot of employees would be using those services. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another line I want to point out, we're also budgeting the repair fair at 10K for FY23. I think that was a great success here just recently. We have paving at $2 million, sidewalks at $1 million. Continue to do recycling. Demolitions, $1,750,000. We're carrying over 1.5 of that to pay for the G.D. Johnson building tear down, and then we have $250K. Beautification, $50,000. I think that was a DOC goal when we met with you all a few months ago to spruce up the city with flowers and landscaping, along with the Paramount planners. We're also looking at adding on 4 policemen and women, police personnel, at $391,820, and cruisers to go along with it at $226,990. And we'll talk about that a little bit more because that's in the capital purchase improvement fund. Also, a new call center that we have is going to be ABG administrator. Salary $76,496. And we'll also recommend purchasing a vehicle for them at $35K. And the last additional personnel that we're looking at adding, it would be an asset manager. This would help us manage piping, whether it be in the utility fund, central garage, vehicles. Maybe you can add on to that, sir. I mean, it was originally Mr. Gracie's idea, I think, from his Army days as a supply sergeant, if I got that correct.
It's taken a lot more form. Something that, from my background, was a supply sergeant, and that was pretty, and that's just controlling assets in the city, which is pretty limited. But based on the work of Tony, Michelle, Mike Atkins, and Steve Cole, this has really evolved into something much more, into talking about life cycle replacement across the board. We've not done a very good job. I shouldn't say we've not done a good job about it. We've not managed it well. We've talked conceptually, for example, about vehicles. We invested in the police vehicles a couple years ago, and the concept that was said is, hey, when they get to a point where they're not great for police vehicles, they're still great for the rest of the city to do. And we can do that with a lot of other assets in the city. You know, where we've come on IT management, where this was all managed individually, there are life cycle opportunities there, and also accountability on equipment is also critical. I wish Mike was here because he could explain it in a lot more technical terms. We will get better rates from managing our assets. We don't do that right now, and he's got a, again, part of my education on this is managing to a threshold of, I have very aggressive goals of like down to the $50 level. That's impossible right now. But if we start managing assets at the $2,500 level, $2,500 level, that will dramatically help our insurance. So it's basically, and we've got the job description on the agenda this week, if you all don't have any issue with this going forward. But I think it's really a smart move. I think it's a progressive move. And there was one other area I was going to add to that also. And Sean knows that he's out of town. I forgot. It'll come to me in a minute, and I'll remember that also.
Manager, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just give me an overview of what a day would be like for an asset manager.
Well, I think the first
You
year,
know, what are they going to do day to day, you know?
I think the first year and a half is going to be
Inventory.
putting a system in inventory.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just going to be massive to do.
Yeah.
We know I assume there's software programs out there. I know there's software programs out there. So on a day-to-day basis, ensuring, doing inventories across the city. Also something else, and Tony, Michelle, if you guys don't want credit for this, I won't give it to you, but we still don't have good synchronicity between the garage, and both of our utilities. So those are all managed independently, and they're fine. I feel very comfortable with where we're at on the inventories of both the garage and also with water distribution and wastewater collection. You know, they've got huge inventories. You all have been down in their supply areas, you know, managing brass, et cetera. So we can also synchronize those efforts onto the same software where we should be able to do inventory at any point. There's other things, for example, and Steve brought up when I mentioned this to him, actually he was talking about asset manager in a very different frame, but how do we manage the underground pipe assets? How does that interface with our GIS? So we got GIS multiple layers up there, but how are we using that effectively to manage that as we spend $1.5 million?
So a general asset manager is going to know about stuff from engineering, what's underground?
Potentially. So I think the first...
And it's too big of a job for the department heads to do for each department.
I think, absolutely, because I think otherwise it's being managed 13 different ways. And I think it's part of our challenge, is how do we synchronize those assets? How do we know? We do cross-leveling occasionally. We do an okay job of that with vehicles, but I think there's going to be other areas that we're going to also benefit on this from. The other thing was IT hardware and software. So I mentioned hardware, but just as a result of Michelle Grubb departing, she's been managing that, oversighting, for example, the bill we get from VC3. Are we paying too much? Are we paying too little? And an asset manager could review those and ensure that we aren't, you know, that's being managed effectively.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out once the inventory is done and all this is input somewhere, what are they going to do?
Inventories.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inventory
So
and asset
it's a
management.
continual thing
Yes.
that we need to do, and it will take up a full-time employee to do that.
I believe so.
Well,
And if it,
Can I get with, I've seen positions like this before, and to me, I mean, like, in any job, you have satisficers and optimizers, right? To me, doing a routine inventory is a satisficing task. That's something you've got a procedure for you're gonna do. But that optimizing part of looking at how we can get value out of that. So whomever takes this position has to be somebody that's capable of looking at the inventories, but also looking, hey, we're doing all of this in mind to get more value out of what we have in our assets.
I think that's a great way to put it. And I'm not trying to dodge your question, Commissioner, but I think at the point where we get inventory down and we look at our processes, I think I'm confident we're going to discover other value that we can get. I think it's a great way to describe it, as the Commissioner said. If we find that position is underutilized, we'll expand.
We'll give them something else.
We'll give other things to do, but I think.
Which leads me to my question. I wrote this down when I was going through it last week. We have in here, and I don't see it in this summary, and it doesn't matter, I just have a question. So we have this asset manager we're looking to add, but then also in the unclassified, was it 101-0901, we have a facilities manager position listed on there. Can you explain the difference, and do we do both,
absolutely.
and can they work together?
The facilities manager was Lawrence.
Okay.
And we have not refunded Lawrence, we've got him in, we've got that position in the budget, but we're not funding it right now.
Okay.
So y'all know what Lawrence did, he did everything. I mean, so Christina might be able to say right now, there's an argument to moving forward with that, but right now, we're still letting the dust settle from his departure. There's things that streets can come up and do, there's things that utilities
I
can
guess
come
my
up and do.
question is, manager, is it a possibility, to Commissioner Briggs's point, to sort of roll all of that into facilities asset management?
I'd prefer to wait.
Okay.
And to your point, Commissioner, if that's something that we can do, I think we should do. But if we distract that position with becoming Lawrence, we're not going to get to asset
I understand
management.
completely. I just was trying to figure out.
I was
the
going to say,
difference.
money-wise is what you're talking about.
Yes.
It's less about maybe the role.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out.
You're trying to not add a position if we don't have to.
Yes.
So, because then that, like, totally different things there.
We can, I think to your point, we could not fund the facility manager position.
It's not funded.
Oh, it's not,
It's
okay.
not funded.
Okay,
It's
that was
just-
my question.
It's just noted because it is in the authorized position that you all have voted on, so we
So-
noted it that it's still a position, but we have not
That
funded it.
answers my
But you
question.
could
Thank
still,
you.
you could still keep your funded positions lower if you eliminated one and added the other.
Right.
Which is basically, we've done it with the money side, but not
We
with
just
the.
haven't done it in policy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think there's any harm in holding the facility manager on there instead of going through the administrative portion, disengaging the position and then re-engaging the position. It's just, again, I didn't know it was unfunded. I thought we were funding it just in case something popped this year, but I think it's a smart way to do it.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I just was trying to make that connection in my brain.
And Commissioner Spriggs, what we're really going to have to do is put some, report back on this, how it evolves. I think Mike, Mike Finance, Engineering did a really exceptional job on defining this. And when you look at the job description, there's things that I haven't mentioned. But I think this position has got a ton of potential to really help the city operate more efficiently at many different levels. Satisfier, optimizer, I think those are great.
I mean, it just seems strange to me that we're going to try to find somebody that knows the in-depth vernacular, not only the vernacular, but the guts of, say, an engineering department. I mean, they're
I
going to
think
have.
it's more of a logistics person
It
than
is.
anything. I don't think they have to know exactly how engineering works. They just
No,
have to make
I'm
sure that
talking
the
about
parts
the-
that he gets stay where they belong, and if he's not using them, can they be used somewhere else in the city?
Well, I get that. No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, if you ask for this la-di-da thing, they're going to have to know what it is and how many of them there are. Now, I would have known some of this stuff when he's talking about underground stuff. So it seems like somebody that's going to have to know an awful lot about each one of these departments as opposed to the department heads know.
Probably not a good comparison, but if you think of a parts clerk in a auto parts store, you don't have to know anything about mechanics. It helps for sure, but that person learns as they go.
I mean, they don't need to know how it works. I know that. but what I'm saying is, all these people have expertise in these things already. And, you know, it's just kind of strange to me that they're gonna,
Well, my thought is, if we do end up moving forward with this position, that person, I would hope, would be holding the directors to account for the inventories in their own departments.
Yeah.
Because that would be probably more practical. I don't know of anybody in the private sector that isn't holding their directors responsible
They should
for their
be.
inventories. I think maybe what would happen potentially out of this hire would be developing the standards and protocols to guide the directors on how inventory control and management really needs to be taking place. Because I do share concerns, and I think you did previously in the commission prior to the current term, and I know Commissioner Gooden, these things have come up. We've had things missing.
Yeah.
We've had, obviously, sometimes even a lack of controls, noted it in our audit. And those have always been important, I think, for our commission specifically to remedy. So I do see the potential for a positive out of this, but I also share concerns. We don't want to create a position just to be creating a position. I would hope that when it does finally get to us to consider that everything has been really thought through, so that that person, when they come in here, we're not learning on the fly, we're not evolving. This person comes in with a set of standards and direction, so that we're not learning as we go, if you will. I think that if, Josh, you may be able to say this for certain, but I'm sure there is a protocol for that industry specifically that is implemented in many companies, cities, counties, all over the place, so.
Right, if you look, almost exactly what you just described, Mayor, bullet number 3 on this job description, establishes consistency in asset management of the city on a citywide basis, including, and it's got, 11 items underneath that. So I'm very
department
confident.
heads still have to be responsible for inventory.
Pardon?
Department heads still have to be responsible for their inventory.
They do.
Yeah, and they should.
Yes.
Yeah.
A quick example on that, because I just can't say, because it's just flashbacks of what happened in the situation. Forklifts. So our facility here and in Chicago, our logistics manager is our asset manager. And before this person took control of it, obviously I was keeping inventory of ours. I knew what was going on with ours, safety devices, things like that, because it's not just the physical thing.
Yeah.
But then when that logistics manager got a hold of it, they said, oh, well, we've got a plant in Chicago, we've got a plant in Welland, we've got a plant in Monterey. Guess what? They come up with a contract between Toyota that saved us like tens of thousands of dollars because he aligned all of those things.
Right.
And so to me, I mean, every
You
year.
aligned all those locations.
Well, the.
Bulk
the-
purchases.
The
Yes,
purchase of
I
the,
see,
yeah.
yeah.
And
So,
not
but
saying
we're
that
not
there's-
doing that.
well-
That's apples and oranges.
No,
But
no,
an
no.
asset manager could.
Yeah.
If the police department's purchasing X and the fire department's purchasing X and they don't know
Well,
that
I
each other's
get
doing
that,
that, but you have somebody who does, then you might get a better,
To me, this is a job.
Yeah, well, I think the fire truck tires, at least.
you know what I mean though.
This is one of those jobs that, I mean, I think like every year I try to do stuff that pays for myself in my job. This feels like one of those jobs that gets.
Yes, I agree.
Y'all can turn your book to page 7. That concludes my presentation on the general fund. The next fund is the TIF fund. Revenues are projected to be $99,415. Debt service is $301. The fund balance is negative $895,000. It has debt of $3.8 million. Again, the debt service is $301K. Salaries and benefits is $0. Expense is the audit, $300, has no capital outlay. And TIF owes the general fund at, coming up on June 30, 22, $1.2 million.
that's gotta be a tough one to, I mean, how do we know what the revenues are gonna be on that?
Yeah.
Because we're going into a very different time than we've come out of the last year and a half, right?
We use the historical revenues, and we do know, so we have the tax rolls, so we know which property taxes are going up.
Yeah,
Your question's on estimation though.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, obviously, it's the same, it's difficult to forecast some of these things, but I mean, if we go off of, it's only been around since, what, 2019, so.
We do anticipate minimal property growth. I just recently got in the assessments for that particular area, and there is a very modest growth. In terms of net profit, there's zero net profit. It's flat, or actually constricting some. The growth that you are seeing is when you businesses hire people, particularly probably Delta, and we're getting the occupational license fee tax at about $44K. On page 8 is the MAP fund. This is something we budget each year. It's excise tax on motor fuels. It's collected by the state, remitted to the city based on the population and the miles of paved streets. Currently, it's balanced. We anticipate getting $443K.
There was a discussion at the state level that the governor was wanting to suspend part of the tax, I assume, that was charged to consumers, but then we got guidance from the state that they were going to try to make up the revenue difference for the cities and counties. Was that correct?
I'm not at 100% on board on that or updated.
Up to date.
To our best guessment, I've not heard anything otherwise. Those are actually embedded in the base fee. So, I mean, no matter the wholesale level, so no matter the actual price increases, it's still got, at one time I had it written down, but it's like 38 cents on a gallon.
Right.
It's federal and state period.
Right.
I mean, so, but.
Worst case scenario, if they did, we still have $2 million budgeted to them to pay us.
So-
Got it, okay.
But again, that can only be used on the streets and sidewalks.
Yeah.
If you turn to page 9 real quick, it's the Community Development Block Grant, Fund 208. It's budgeted, balance budgeted at $1.6 million. These grants help low to moderate income citizens. Has a fund balance of $65,000, has zero debt, salary and benefits to administer the program at $145.6K, operating expenditures $26,000, and then the actual projects themselves is $1.4 million. And if you see page 10 for details, I'll brief you on that, pull out a few of that, it's important on page 10. And by the way, this page 10 is your action plan that you all adopt. But just point out a few of them. The homeowner rehab, home repairs for low to moderate income, 50K. Down towards the lower part, you see East Central Park Playground. It's playground equipment, surface tables, benches, lights, $174,000. We're looking at clearance and demos in CDBG target neighborhoods of $100,000. And down to the very bottom, second to the bottom, Salvation Army rehab lobby, security cameras, flooring, purchase beds, the linen, the lockers, $441,000. And also the very last one, sidewalk program, this is to install and rehab sidewalks in East Central, and Pollard, $150K.
I lost a bubble on this. Where's the East Central Park playground? Is that the existing one? No, I mean, I see it here. Where physically, where's that at?
It's some to the existing up on the form.
Kind of off Railroad Drive.
Say East Central Park?
East Central Park Playground.
Jacob, do you know where that's at?
It's a little, very narrow park. Yeah.
Okay, it's the one off, it's off Railroad Drive.
Yeah, we've driven by that, city manager.
It's, I mean, it looks nice right now, but it's not to the standard of
Is
the
that where
Central Park
used to
stuff.
be the bicycle trail went through there?
Probably, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The only thing I guess I had questions on was the carryover. The projected carryover is 1 million.
Yes.
Is that for Dixon Street, or what was the?
I think it's a broad variety of things. Jacob, can you comment on that, the carryover?
I know we had to pay back a lot of that money for the Pollard Mills project, and so the money came out of the general fund. But we get that money back in CDBG, so now we have to redistribute it to something else. There was also the Unity Center with another situation like that.
And also, like, the clearance, we used the general fund money first. He had money budgeted in this fiscal year for it. He just carried it over because we used the general fund money first.
In advance.
And it gave them time to get a program in place. So that was $150,000,
Okay.
Pollard's part of it.
So, just so we're clear, it's not $1 million hanging out there.
No.
No, for example, fiscal year 22 budget was 1.3,
Right.
and there was carryover there too.
Right.
So it's common. If you turn to page 11, this is a new fund. It's the ARPA fund, American Rescue Plan Act. It's legally required to be accounted for in a separate fund. It's $12.9 million, and that'll be used for utility projects. It has a fund balance of 0, debt 0, salary 0, operating expenditure 0, and project outlay is 12.92. And if you turn to page 12, we listed out what composes the 12.9 million. And I won't read all of them, but just a few of them sticks out to me. Install generators at the pump station, 975,000. Tank rehab construction at 13th Street, $1,000,005. Tank rehab at High Knob, $1.1 million, and tank rehab at Log Town, $1 million. But I'll give you a minute or two to review the list. If you got any questions, we can ask Steve.
You know, every time we do these, I find a place I don't know. Long Tank or High Knob.
I wasn't sure where Log Town was. Is that on the green or the industrial parkway?
Industrial Parkway.
And you all have more detail in the books.
Now, how to get that name?
And there's detail in your black books that you all got that shows what each of these projects are for.
I know we mentioned this before, but I think the work that Steve and Mark and their staffs have done on this has been fantastic. We talked about the ones in the generation. I know recently the mayor, you talked about the above the ground stuff that gets a lot of the attention, but this really is, this is strategic in so many ways that we just would not have the opportunity to get to. And I feel incredibly comfortable with these two folks and in coordination with the rest of the staff that we're really prioritizing and triaging the right way.
So you think, you're saying that what's going on with all this, we'll be in good shape with our water tanks? Yeah?
Addressing
Yeah.
these tanks, we
Yeah.
have other tanks. We have
Well,
more
I have
things
other
to
big
do.
places I never.
Yeah. Yes, you Well, you probably heard of the other ones, so they're a little bit more common. But each tank is unique and has its own set of challenges.
Will each tank have a generator in? Or do they need, each one need a generator?
Well, some was easy to do, some were not, right?
Yes, out at the Summit, we ran into
An
a
issue.
surprise there. We have already inspected these two tanks, and
identified more specifically the structural deficiencies that we'll address with this amount of money, as well as the recoding that place these into service, and we'll get another 20 years of useful life out of these without expending any more funds.
So I would call all of these infrastructure projects.
Yeah.
And so that
Yes,
means
absolutely.
100% of our ARPA funds went to infrastructure.
We've not wavered off that, Commissioner.
Yeah, that was our goal, right?
On page 13 is, this is a new fund. It's the Conference Center grant. Has a balanced budget of 1 million. Fund balance is 0, debt 0, salary benefits is 0, expenses 0, capital outlay is $1 million, and that is for engineering and design work. I think this money was funded through the, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right, Ambler grant. What is it, abandoned mine land economic revitalization grant?
Yeah, Commissioner Clark was responsible for that work that got us
Thank you.
$1 million.
I was just going to say that, you took my thunder. I was going to give her credit for that.
I don't need that credit. I don't need that credit. I
And,
just know how to write it.
Just to point out, that fund does legally require us to have a separate accounting, separate fund. So, good job, Commissioner Clark.
You paid for yourself until you
For the next 150.
22.
Just FYI, with Michelle's departure, Steve has taken over as primary contact with the Ambler team.
Okay.
I think I mentioned to you all a week or two ago, we had a good in-session. They're still trying to get their minds around this because these grants always result in something tangible, whereas the only, structure, et cetera, this will be that plan, which of course propels what we need to do with the conference center. But just in case there's any confusion on that's being handed over to Steve.
And just to let you guys know, because I participated in that meeting, this is a little bit of an enigma for the AML team. They haven't really funded a project that the only thing that came out of it was engineering and design. They'd like to see a finished, we did this, and so they're trying to, like the city manager said, kind of rationalize and understand our finished product to the point that we'll be able to report this is how we finished spending your money. So it's a little bit of a difficult process, I think, for everyone right now. A little bit, just because it's something they've never done. And I kudos to the state and to the Ambler people for saying yes to it when it's not typical of what they accept. So.
If you turn your book to page 14, go into the Section 8 voucher program. This is a federal grant to help low to moderate income citizens with housing payments. The budget is balanced at $3.4 million, has a fund balance of $128,205, has 0 debt, salary $361K, operating expenditures $86,000. Housing assistance payments, HAP payments, $2.9 million. We're currently serving 511 families in Boyd County. And the Section 8 Management Assessment Program, CMAP, we've been rated a high performer for the last 6 years, so kudos to Mr. Pullman and his staff.
I always like seeing these numbers. We get questioned all the time. What does the city do to help people who need help? And this is
There you
this is where it
go.
goes.
An important number, I didn't mean to go real quick, but the housing assistance payments, that's what's actually, the payments going to the landlord. And that's $2.9 million for 511 families in
Well,
Boyd
it's in some
County.
other areas too, where we see those lunches.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
No, I just
other
think you're
areas,
right.
yeah, so
In particular,
it's
proud of
tucked away.
we also have the veterans vouchers, and that continues to grow.
Great.
Because I think when we first applied for it, we started out with, 8 or something. It's grown.
It was, yeah.
So,
a little bit more. And on page 15 is the flood wall operating fund for flood wall maintenance and flood prevention. It's balanced at $294K. Fund balance has a decent, healthy fund balance for the size of the fund, $177,000. has zero debt, salary, 163, operating expenditures, 88,000, capital outlay, 43,000. I'm not sure what stop and breakers are or replacement disconnect, but I'm sure Jack could tell us. The assessment base is 205,437,000. 2021 tax rate was 0.0925. And you'll see the tax rates coming up here very soon. For the general fund, we're looking at taking the compensating tax rate, which will generate the same amount of revenue as the prior year.
What is that rate?
I think it's 0.2544. Don't quote me on that. The reason I was bringing that up, I did recommend a slight modification from 0.0925 to, I think, 0.1056. That's to meet the capital and the increase in costs and stuff. I mean, it's less than a penny on $100 in assessment value. And I'd also point out that the flood wall earned a high performer rating in all categories for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So kudos to Jack and his team.
We mentioned this the last 2 years, but that's been a spectacular turnaround at the flood wall. And now it's at the point of being maintained, spending that money. So again, just great
Again, it's
work.
one of those areas where you don't see it.
Yeah.
You just expect it to work when you need
Exactly.
it. So appreciate you all getting that in line.
I don't even think that.
And with that, I'm going to turn the remainder of the budget over to Ms. Steve. She's going to take you through the utility fund all the way to the capital purchase improvement fund.
The utility fund is starting on page 16. We have a balanced budget of $22.4 million. We serve 14,110 customers. We have 3 major revenue line items, which is your residential meter sales of city. We have $2.3 million budgeted this year. It's pretty consistent with last year. There's a $23,000 difference. Our residential meter sales non-city is 1.8 million. It varies 18,854 from last year. Sewer charges city is 3.2 million. There's $269,000 difference from last year. With the expenses, we are budgeting 6.6 million for administration and our debt, insurance, and utility pension payments. 7.2 million is budgeted for water production and distribution. We have 2.6 million for water capital. We'll go a little deeper in that later. Our wastewater treatment and collection is 3.97 million. And we have 2 million budgeted for sewer capital, which we'll do detail on the next page. There's there's one new position, is the asset manager. 50% of their cost will be allocated to the utility fund, because the utility fund has a lot of assets and inventory. So $41,830. That's the only payroll change that we have in the utility fund this year. The utility fund, within these expenses, we are facing a lot of inflationary pressures. The cost of piping has increased from $135,000 to $300,000. That's a 122% increase for $165K. Chemicals have went up to $162,000, as you all voted on in your April agenda. Every chemical has had a significant increase. Fuel prices, it hit this utility fund with $60,000. And utilities went up 587,000. 365,000 of that is water, where I think we're doing additional flushing. 222,000 increase for all other utilities. So our utility bills are going up in each division. So that's some things that we need to, obviously follow. If you turn to page 17, we'll talk a little of the physical health of the fund. Unrestricted fund balance for fiscal year 21 is 2.8 million, or 103 days of operating expenses. This is down some from the prior fiscal year of 4.1 million, so we had a decrease in our net position of 1.3 million. We have debt of 19.6 million. Debt service payments a year are 2.3 million, or 10.4%. We will be facing the challenge of the building of the sewer plant later, how to fund that and pay for that with our taking on additional debt. We do have a few benefits. If you look at the 2013 revenue bonds, those will be paid off next fiscal year. So that's a $512,000 debt service payment that will reduce. So that is something positive. Our 2015 water and sewer bonds will be paid off in 2030. We're looking at the radio read meter loan. Also, with your permission, we would like to pay it off, that lease, early. It's due in 2041. We can save about $200,000 if we pay it off this year in interest. We have a KI loan that will be paid off in 2029, and the other debt service payment, the big one is the various utility projects we just did. It's $695,113. And the last utility, the CSO debt, is paid with the CSO funds at $412,873. We also have an unfunded utility pension liability of $6.2 million. We're funding that this year at $509,705. We have about 22 utility pensioners on this fund still. It's 2.3% of our budget. Salary and benefits are 8.6 million, or 38.9% of the budget. Operating expenses are 6.3 million, or 28% of the budget. Capital outlay has went down significantly because last year's projects we actually put in the ARPA fund to account for them properly, since it had to have its own fund. We'll actually look at pages 15 and 16 here in a minute. Kentucky retirement, ICMA retirement is 1.35 million. It's up 94,000 from last fiscal year. Majority of your increases in Kentucky retirement are in the general fund because of the hazardous is a much higher rate than the non-hazardous employees. And another thing that we'll be talking about here in the near future, the utility rate modification for the sewer plant. So I have to be determined because we have a lot of, issues still to work out with that one. Because with higher rates and then inflation, we didn't do anything with utility rate modifications in this budget. Some interesting numbers. Our water plant produced 3 billion gallons, and our wastewater plant treated 1.5 billion gallons. We actually did main replacement for the sewer, 2,461 feet in fiscal year 21. Main replacement is 5,209 feet. If you want to turn over to page 18, we'll do some highlights of the water capital. As I said, the majority of the capital now that we're doing in infrastructure is ARPA, but we still want to do some projects here. We're extending the loading dock at the water plant for $40,000, a hydrographic study for 10, buying some chlorine analyzers for distribution at $250,000. We want to do some valve servicing at $150,000 for water distribution, buying a few trucks And the big one that has been a priority of you all in prior commissions is $2 million for water main replacement. And $540,000 of this is going to be paid for with a grant for the US 23 replacement that we got from KIA ARPA. That's why it's a little more than $1 million, and some of it will be some carryover from Belmont this year.
If you notice one number, and Mark and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but the main brakes last year was 235, so that still gets us in the 80 brakes per 100 mile per year range. And we knew, unless you go to $3.2 million every year, we really weren't going to significantly tackle that. This is increased, which is great, but I think as Michelle laid out perfectly, we're gonna not buy as much as we could have with that a year or two ago. It all sounds doom and gloom. I still think we're absolutely prioritizing the right lines at the right times. And then the smaller line repairs and replacements, I just want to emphasize we continue to adjust them as we go throughout the year. But utilities has a solid plan of what's going to happen next. So we're just one bite at a time, eating the elephant with the stuff and the water line replacement. But also, and Mark, tell me if I'm wrong here, this is a significant difference in wastewater collection line than we've done historically over the past 10 years.
Yes, and wastewater has actually so far done all this work themselves. So they've done a tremendous job evaluating the ones that city staff can tackle. And with the water main replacement too, we've also tackled the ones that if we do have outages, we can rerun the system. We don't have this big outage people with water anymore. So we've tackled the most important ones first. If you go to page 19, it's the wastewater capital projects. The first 4 are just minor improvements to the sewer plant to keep it running and the way it should be with some motors and pumps. Engineering fees for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, 1.6, all funded so far with CSO. And the last 3 are main replacements that has been completed, they're going to be completed with city labor. So
those costs look really low to me, and it's because of that, I'm sure.
Bruce and his team have done an amazing job with the main replacements because the majority of them they have completed in-house. And a lot of the plans from this point on in water distribution, there's a lot that they're completing in-house also. That's once they've got these big ones out of the way for safety reasons and lack of not having enough staff to pull everybody at once, we have what's left on the list. A lot of them are going to be completed with water distribution in-house labor also.
And I think you're forgetting one data point that you wanted to share. Last night about midnight, there was some debate of whether, we look at these data points and, are they really important to the BOC? And
He made fun of me.
well, I did not make fun of you, but go ahead and tell me the data point.
It costs $27,000 a day to run our water system, our utility system.
That's interesting.
That was just an interesting tidbit I thought, or I might have been tired at the point.
Is that the utility system or what?
The whole utility system.
You're gonna keep Mark awake. That's expensive water system.
Well, and the only other challenge I think we are facing is staffing. Mark's going to have some staffing challenges, which we're going to look at with the compensation study because, other people are stealing our talent and we have a lot of talent that are retiring. So we're losing a lot of experience. But other than that, the sewer plant and the utility fund concludes it. Any questions? Okay. The next fund is the Ashland bus system. The proposed balanced budget is $3.3 million. $3 million of that is federal grants. $300,000 is local, $30,000 through fares, and $292,000 through general fund transfer. We've done a few things to keep that transfer low. We've actually got our paratransit program, which was a high labor, funded at 80-10-10. So our entire paratransit program through some grant application changes is gonna be funded at 10% for the city. So that's a high dollar thing that, and a great program for our citizens that we've actually got lower.
That's good.
So the unrestricted fund balance is $173,937. The fund has no debt. Salary and benefits, $1 million, or 30.4% of the budget. Operating expenses, $337,685, or 10.2% of the budget. Contingency is $1.7 million, or 51.1% of the budget. Where we got the extra federal funds, we have not utilized all our maintenance funds, but in subsequent years, we're looking at a bus garage facility and some improvements. We've outgrown our facility, so that's what we're kind of saving the money for in future years. Capital outlay is $275,000, or 8.3%. We have intentions of purchasing a bus for $125,000 and a ridership software app for $150,000. This app will actually, in addition to providing real-time data to our ridership to where the bus is, you know, how far are they away from you, it'll actually also run our paratransit program. It'll do all our scheduling, and it actually monitors the buses too. We can actually tell you where our buses are, how fast they're going, where they're at. So it's more than an app. It's several things within
The
the
app
software
actually
program.
does the scheduling?
Yes.
Wow.
So it's kind of neat. It's very labor intensive running the paratransit program.
Yeah.
So the software, if you want to schedule an appointment at 1 o'clock on Friday to be picked up, you can actually do it yourself and send it instead of having to get a hold of Tammy.
Oh, yeah.
So
So we had 65,000 riders, 66,000 riders on there.
yes, and then that could be the
It's
same
not
person.
unique.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that's
Oh, I
up.
said riders.
Yeah.
So it's not.
That's up 13,845 from last year, but we've not fully rebounded through COVID. The restrictions on COVID just come up in April for the bus system. So we actually had every other row blocked off
Yeah.
where they could maintain the distance. So the ridership is starting to rebound from COVID. We plan on doing some marketing efforts and stuff next year. And the one additional thing with the bus system is we have an additional bus driver. This will let us run all 5 routes every hour, where it takes some of our citizens 3 hours to go to the grocery stores because the buses run every other hour. This will allow both our 29th Street and Crosstown will go every hour.
That's great.
That makes me so happy. Thank you.
So-
That was a BOC goal.
Yes.
right?
Thank you.
So that will be in there. We'll have to do some public hearings and stuff before we get it started, but it's fun.
And let me throw this out there while we're talking about that. I know, and I apologize, but it's something that I've just thought about in the last couple of weeks as things have been announced in the county. I definitely want us to consider routing out to the other end of the county.
We go past Summit, we turn around there somewhere near the dollar store, so I don't know how,
Yeah, that's right across the street.
Well, the only reason I say that is we're probably going to see a lot of citizens that
Yes.
will need transportation to potential new jobs that are being created out in the county. And I'm worried that if transportation is the only thing hindering them from getting a job, this great service that we offer our citizens, this may be advantageous for us to help them get the job they so desperately need.
we're so close anyway, when we'll actually look at the routes, since we're going every hour.
Yeah.
And see if we can put the time in to extend that, because Crosstown 29th and that route actually,
Link.
yeah. So we'll look at that to see how we can do that.
So we're limited by state, but not county or counties?
We are limited.
State lines, I meant to say. Or are we limited to not be able to do what the mayor described, or is that all?
No, we're not limited at all.
We're the regional transportation provider.
We're only
correct?
financial, what the financial choices are.
Yeah, but we are the regional transportation provider.
Yes.
We can't run into, if we wanted to run into Ironton, could we?
No, because Iron has their own bus system, but we could run over there and drop off people.
Or
We could
transfer.
not do a route over there.
Yeah.
Because their goal is you can actually get on a bus in Ashland and you work your way up to Huntington, Charleston, just riding buses.
Okay, thank you.
I got run from the Aubrey in one night.
You still got the t-shirt?
I think,
Always gotta go
I
there.
think the guy that just played down at the riverfront was there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah. Usually people shut it down.
Not that I've ever-
Okay. The next fund is the Recreation Operating Fund. It has a proposed balance budget of $2.6 million. 918,000 is coming out of the general fund, which that is normal for them because the general fund funds recreation. The miscellaneous, the 183, includes a $175,000 grant for the playground at Oliveria Park. And 1.5 million is actually going to be funded out of fund balance and some bond proceeds that are left. So the unrestricted fund balance for FY21 is $370,215. We actually put away to fund some of these park projects 2 years ago when it was in Central Park. We already had the money over there, so this is not coming out of bond funds and it's not coming out of current revenue. It was already parked over there for these purposes. Debt equals 0. Salary and benefits is $886,175 or 33.8%. Operating expenses are $363,984 or 13.8%. Capital outlay is $1.4 million or 52.4%. Detail is on the next page of our capital. We have arches in Central Park at $150,000. This will put an arch at every entrance into Central Park. Security cameras, I think you all have already voted now on the bid for them at $115,000. Bollards, parking improvements, $15,000. All the park projects, the majority of them have got finished this year, except Dawson, and we did not have time to get them done and still open the pool on time. Replace the pool liner, $125,000. Replace some bad concrete at $75,000. A splash pad at $325,000. But Amber has actually done some work in the last week. She thinks it would be closer to the $200,000 range. She's actually had someone come out and look and measure out, and she thinks it'd be closer to the $180,000 to $200,000 range.
Do you know what Moorhead's population is? Anybody?
It's the city of Morehead?
Yeah. It's small, right?
Yes.
Smaller than us.
Yes.
They just announced and opened a splash pad significantly bigger than any I've seen
Yes.
in the area.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yes.
And it's interesting.
7,600.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's 10,000 people.
So
Because it's off-school season, it's empty.
And I know that we don't have a wading pool for our little ones anymore at Dawson Pool, correct?
No.
So we
Don't
have
think so,
nothing
but I'm not-
except the little splash area there at Central Park. So I think this will be a great benefit to the littlest ones who obviously can't swim yet. And I think it's going to be, depending on where we end up putting it and if we move forward with this project, I think it's going to be a great value-added benefit for our community.
Absolutely.
It seems to be pretty popular with other cities, up a number.
Yeah, I think Bracelet's put money in,
Yeah.
and like some of the other small cities and
Is
down
that
here.
the correct price?
I like that we're putting security cameras too.
It's went down, it's within the last week, I told them. Security cameras at the sports park for $35,000. Lots at the sports park for $150,000. The playground for Oliverio, $350,000. We have a $175,000 grant, and we already have the rest parked in fund balance, so none of that's coming out this year's. Security cameras at Oliverio for $35,000. Some of the projects finished in FY22 is the Sensory Garden, Sports Park Scoreboard, Dog Park, Central Park shelter houses, Oliveria Park improvements at the ball fields, Riverfront flagpoles, Central Park all-inclusive playground, Southside Playground has been ordered, Dawson Playground has been ordered, the pickleball courts. We've done various outdoor furniture in the parks, benches and swings, $55,770, and the pond fountain. Does anybody have any questions on Central Park or the park recreation?
So, those are all awesome, by the way. Congratulations to everybody for all of those projects. With those projects, and I know a lot of those projects were just improving existing areas. But, so we have more city parks than we have parks employees. So that's an interesting statement that, you gotta drill down into. I think there's an overall question here that I'm really concerned about, just knowing what I see in the private world of personnel and what we're seeing as far as, now obviously, there's gonna be a lot of work. I mean, with that many people and what we've done and what we already had, that's a lot of work for those personnel. So, I don't, it's not I don't manage the department, so I guess I'd be interested if there's no recommendation for anything, then, then there's no recommendation. Okay, fine, let's do whatever. I guess personnel-wise, not just for the parks, but also like sanitation and a couple departments like that. If we're really being proactive, I've already got the message of where we are financially. We're in a very sound position. But looking at what I'm dealing with right now and what other companies are dealing with, it's no different. We share the same people. So I guess personnel-wise, there's just kind of an overall concern that I have.
Is your concern that you would like to advocate for more positions being made to match the amount of parks we have?
I don't want to advocate if it's not true. If there's a need there, which maybe there is, maybe there's not. I guess I'm just asking the question.
This budget does, I think I told you all individually and collectively when we had the last budget session or the one-on-ones, we're trying to interpret what you all's guidance is to do on this. This budget does reflect a split of the HR and recreation.
Yes, it actually gives a full-time park director to maintain. Now, as far as other staffing, they do work outside the park. They actually maintain all the right-of-ways. There's a lot of the right-of-ways.
Yeah.
Well, how many employees are in the Parks Department?
Full-time?
12 full-time, and then they surge in the summer for snack bars
Yes, we
and
do.
lifeguards.
We do.
We have 12 parks?
We do. Now, a couple of those are very small.
Then we hire-
But it's still
seasonal.
areas to maintain them.
We do hire seasonal.
But when
We've parked a lot of money into upgrading these, and if
We
we
wanna
don't have the
maintain.
personnel to maintain them, then we've really kind of wasted money. So
Right.
I agree with Commissioner's
But
comment.
most of the maintenance is done in summer. Aren't we doing summer hiring?
We do seasonals, that's what I just said the second
seasonal.
one.
We do seasonal. Some of these projects are already done, they're
Yeah.
self-sufficient.
So seasonal employees, how many seasonal do we hire just for parks?
I can't answer that question because Amber and Sean are gone, but Amber said her biggest challenge is maybe maintaining the right-of-ways because she's having to pull her people out of the park. Maybe we also give Jack an extra person to maintain the right-of-ways, and then Amber can focus just on the parks.
What do you mean maintain the right of way?
They cut grass out in the right-of-ways in addition to the parks.
All right, okay.
So maybe we could give Jack additional personnel or additional seasonal money to do that.
I was gonna say, some of this, if it's mowing grass, seasonal seems appropriate. It would be
Yeah.
less costly to long-term legacy insurance and benefits that we typically, but the thing is,
Are we having trouble hiring seasonal?
Yes, because what we're paying them.
Yeah, thousands.
That's across the board, and this is anecdotal, it's unchecked, but I was talking to Reed this morning, they had some great interviews. I'm going slightly off
Sure.
topic to make a point, but had some great interviews for water distribution. We normally start those guys at $13, $14 an hour. Had interviewed some great folks, and basically they're saying they're gonna start for under 25.
Yeah.
So, it's not just, and I think Michelle laid out it perfectly, you all know the challenges we have with a lot of utilities. And she also mentioned, and I was gonna pound my foot, the results of the pay and compensation study. I think I predict they're going to be critical and dramatic.
I think they will be.
So just please keep that in the back of your mind. And Mayor, you and I have had this discussion before. Yeah, there's certain jobs that seasonals can do that, you know, you do a little bit of oversight and then fire and forget, so to speak. There's some where it's important to have full-time. I think the city's done a pretty good job through the decades of hiring the right balance of seasonal workers. We didn't. It was a little bit of a hard push getting the lifeguards this year, but we made it. And I still think, Jack, what's your, I mean, you hire a lot of seasonals. What's your opinion?
We've had some trouble here lately acquiring seasons. We're trying to get some for the sanitation department right now. When guys are sick, but
That would be
vacation, it puts the reps behind.
Knowing the nature of what they do.
I think Amber had to go $12 an hour just to get seasonals, which pays the same as our full-time worker.
What
in
is
the
our,
parks.
what are the requirements for seasonal workers?
I guess with cleaning and stuff, do they have to be 18?
That's- yeah.
Have a pulse.
Who knows the cemetery?
Who what?
Parks, we do.
Parks does
Yeah.
that too, okay, because they were busy.
Can we break for lunch?
Yeah.
We're close to being done.
I've got a sandwich calling my name.
We're close, we're almost done, Marty. We're almost done, we're on the back two.
Would you all like us to add more money to streets and parks for seasonal labor?
I don't know.
I don't-
I don't,
let's-
It's
Yeah.
I'm not going to turn down full-time manpower. I've said for 5 years, I think we're about 10 positions away, and there's no science to that or anything,
Wait a
other
minute, are we
than,
talking about full-time or more seasonal stuff?
I think that we've already got flexibility to do seasonals. We've got that flexibility. I think in cases like this, like we've done with the asset manager, like we've done with the police department, like we've done with the bus route, we're responding. I don't think it would be a bad investment to do one in each of those. I mean, you all know some of the challenges we have. Everybody, and Marty, I'm just going to make your head pop off, and you and Jim at the same time. But the maintenance at the, I mean that as a joke, Marty. I'm not paying you.
Last time I went to the ER on this.
I'm regretting saying this, but you know, you look at the statues and, you know, you've got
Oh,
one,
my
I
God.
know. I told you.
Jesus, Mary.
You've got one field of thought that if we constantly maintain that, you know, why can't we have the nice things? It takes time to do that.
But I'm gonna say this,
I think
that
a lot of men with a
that
weed
is
eater.
seasonal work, that is definitely not a permanent position. I think, and I don't want to speak for the Parks Department, but my assumption is that most of the things that we're talking about as far as upkeep when it comes to parks are not going to be degree-seeking
Management
positions.
people, yeah.
And I think what we're looking at
I don't
is,
think they're asking for management, though.
well, you said one or two. I thought you meant actual positions.
If you're talking about worker level folks, that's never gonna hurt us. It builds the bench. We already do a good job of building the bench through the seasonals. I mean, you've seen Jack in sanitation do
Right.
that. You know, Jack started in sanitation. You know, he's a,
I mean, my concern is I just don't want to add any more legacy cost positions if we can get away with using seasonals, because painting, mulching, mowing, to me, you've got a lot of very capable, good people out there that would do it without having to have all the extra added benefits.
Mayor, what else, since we're splitting this up, I'd like to see a plan. You know, if you're gonna hire a new person, we need to see a plan on what they would be doing.
Well,
That's
thanks.
fair. I think, that's why I was saying if it was seasonal,
Yeah,
I feel more
seasonal.
comfortable.
I'm fine with seasonal.
Well, we're also talking about making a director, and I don't understand
Yeah.
the plan for that director either.
Well, we can
I'm responding to y'all's guidance on that.
Well, and here's the thing, we can budget for these things, the finality of it doesn't have to be till a commission meeting.
And for what it's worth, these are on the Thursday's commission meeting, because we said we were going to talk about it during the budget. So the finances laid out the budget to that effect. And Commissioner, I don't want to dismiss your point. I don't have Jack screaming in my ear. I don't have Sean screaming in my ear that they're drowning.
That's all.
They're extremely busy.
That's the most important
That's it.
thing.
You look at the overtime they did this weekend. I mean, you go out there a couple hours after Firkenfest, it looked like it never happened. It was
They did,
amazing
you're
what
right.
those
It
guys
really
did.
That was
was
amazing.
I mean,
It really
that-
was.
Good job.
I'm like,
They're-
something happened down there this weekend? It really-
And Todd, knowing what I know, great job from your team.
We didn't fill up the jails, did we?
Oh, don't go there, don't go there.
Not bad
Yeah.
for 10,000 people.
So I appreciate that, Commissioner, that you brought that up, but I think when the directors say, hey, really, we're starting to drown here, and here's why the seasonals can't work, then we adjust.
Okay,
Then we recommend adjustments.
perfect.
Okay. Any other questions with the parks? The next fund is the Ashland Cemetery. It has $234,479 in the proposed budget. The general fund is supporting it at $112,254. The unrestricted fund balance is $1.8 million. The debt for this fund is $0. The salaries is $178,588 or 76.2%. Operating expenses are $55,891 or 23.8%. There is no capital. We had 82 burials last year. The revenues are insufficient to cover the expenditures. The deficit is the $112,254, and the general fund is funding that. And we're looking at marketing, some possible cost reduction and price studies to
Say,
tackle that.
Congratulations and thank you. I think in the last couple of years, we've done a lot better job in marketing the cemetery. I've seen a couple of advertisements for the cemetery, and I had never seen those before. And I know we've talked about that over and over, so
I haven't seen any.
thank you.
It keeps
so
showing
much.
up on my Facebook feed as a suggestion. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I haven't seen them.
Was that posted on Facebook?
No, I've seen it. I think I've seen
Yeah,
it.
it's-
An ad, like I've seen it a couple of times.
I would also encourage us to look at the pricing model, whether
Yeah,
we
well,
bump
if
up the
it's-
fees or lower to
Yeah.
incentivize more people, but
I think it's a combination of the three
Well,
things.
we want to be competitive, most importantly. I think it's always fair to evaluate that. I think we should be every year, especially with the way prices have changed on everything.
It's a beautiful cemetery and we will keep it up.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's two pluses that we have.
Yes.
The next fund is the parking garage fund.
on page 24.
The parking garage is what we call an enterprise fund, and this accounts for our newly acquired parking garage located at 17th and Central. The fund balance is $0 because it's a new fund. This has no debt. Salary and benefits are $106,810 or 24.5%. We have funded 2 full-time maintenance workers there. Operating expenses are $52,924 or 12.2%. We are doing an influx of capital outlay to get the garage up to where we can, run it properly and have safety. $275,000 or 63.3%. And we're going to fund an automated payment system at $110,000, safety lighting at $45,000, directional and emergency signage at $15,000, a surveillance camera system at $40,000, an emergency phone system at $15,000. And we also put a contingency in there because I'm sure once we get in there, there's going to be some unknown or in this inflationary error, there's going to be some price adjustments to what we already had because these quotes were gotten months ago. Revenues are insufficient to cover operating expenses and capital outlay. The deficit is $404,459, and that will be funded with the general fund. Any questions? The last city fund is the capital purchase improvement fund. It is budgeted at $7.1 million. General government, 3.5, public services, 1.6, police at $462,485, and fire in 1.5 million. The fire department is so high, the chief has actually tried again for a ladder grant of $990,000. If he does not get it this year, we have a match budgeted every year. We're just going to keep that in fund balance till we can actually, get it till we make the down payment on it because it does need funded. But kudos to the fire department for continuing to seek these. The fund balance of this fund is $1.1 million. Debt is $0. Salary and benefits $0. We have operating expenditures of $3,500 to cover the audit. Capital outlay is $7.1 million, and we have a breakdown of that on the next page.
I'd also point out that the majority of this is in fund balance and from the bond
Bond purchase
proceeds.
receipts.
The capital purchase improvement fund is normally not set anymore. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The city building windows, city building heating and air is all from the bond issue. We have various capital projects of $2.5 million. This is actually going to fund any streetscape that we have. It's kind of like a holding account for capital for you all to have a discussion on.
And the windows and heating, they were on last year's budget.
They-
We just didn't get around to doing it, right?
Exactly.
And the 2.5 is at our previous budget work session, it was kind of uncertain
Yeah.
from our point, so we just put a placeholder.
Okay.
With possibilities or capital projects as approved by the BOC currently being studied. Streetscape, downtown improvements, a potential artisan and farmer's market, and other potential projects. We have roadway and streetscape grant for $650,000 is engineering for the downtown. We have a vehicle for the alcohol beverage control. We have some risk management software the city manager spoke of early to track all our assets and inventory at $20,000. We have some equipment, much needed equipment for streets at $169,000. Dawes Street rehab grant at $245,000. Oakview Road culvert replacement at $200,000. The Pollard Mills has moved to capital purchase improvement fund, $550,000. We're actually going to fund it out of the fund balance over here. Packer trucks, 2 garbage trucks at $200,000 apiece. We have a detective vehicle, a van for animal control, 6 patrol vehicles, 4 is for the new officers, 2 is actually to fund, we'll replace some of the older ones that we had, we bought. We're buying new vehicles for the police department. These 2 vehicles are currently usable and they will be given to other city employees to use. So we've chose to put our funding in the police department with new vehicles. Their vehicles are perfectly good for other employees to go around town with.
They'll also be full.
Yes. A license plate reader for downtown parking enforcement of $100,000.
Can I just
Why is
comment?
that so expensive?
I just want to comment on this. So APD is, we're trying to get our plan together on how we're going to do enforcement downtown. In fact, because I think we've talked about it before, because we can't mark the tires, et cetera. So Todd and his folks have been going through with the different options that are out there. We're going to create a challenge if we end up going to the reverse angle parking because Kentucky doesn't have the front license plates. How do you go about that? One person can't physically go up and down the street the entire time. And then how is this going to balance with the parking garage when we go to, is that going to be open for hourly? Is it going to be charges for hourly? We're also going to have kiosks because not everybody, there are programs out there where you can manage parking on just a cell phone, but I know you all remind me very quickly that everybody has a cell phone. So how do we do this payment to people that don't? So this really is it's our best estimate of what this may be. Because I don't want Cheryl busting me in the head again. So it's our best estimate. And I'll be honest, Lieutenant.
That's just for the reader, right?
It's just for the reader, but it's a vehicle mounted and also a man pad or a man portable. Man portable. So, but again, this is growing. We still have to address this doesn't address the kiosks. And I've got a document that was sent to me on Friday, I just didn't open it, that has some rough guesstimates on it.
I mean, our downtown is not that big. Do we really, we can talk about this later, need kiosks around when we could just, we have a drive-through right out here in the alley.
Kiosk is for people who want to pay to park, not pay.
I see.
So imagine one of those on each block.
No.
Okay.
And again, no commitment here, whether it's low cost or no cost. Hey, go park in the city garage for low cost or no cost. If you want to park on the street, there's a fee, and then there's going to be a fine if that abuses it, because as we've discussed before, the roosters are what's causing a lot of problems downtown.
Manager, I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
not about that. I'm going to forget if I don't say it because I've got a circle. We talked about these vehicles that we're purchasing for the police department, and then there will be vehicles available throughout the city for use. Do we need the ABC vehicle then? Or will that be rolled into this?
We actually did the ABC vehicles separately because we're going to have this additional revenue and we can actually fund that
Fund it
vehicle with
through
additional
that.
revenue.
Thank you.
Got it.
That was perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
And we thought it looked more official.
Yes.
I
Got
got
it.
stumbled on that Saturday morning. Michelle had to give me the exact same question. But we are getting close to getting into the, and Todd, I don't know how far away we are from it, from the fleet that we got a couple years ago, so that's a good thing.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Garage doors at the central station, $250,000. The aerial truck is $1.2 million. Their grant application is $990. We have the additional match budgeted. The SUV for fire prevention personnel is $30. Is there any questions? Because we probably need to discuss the $2.5 million where we're going to.
Do we want to discuss that now, or after?
Let's do
I know
lunch.
Drew's about to-
Let's do
Okay.
lunch and
Instead of
everybody.
waste away to
Okay.
nothing.
We'll recess, how long, guys? 30 minutes work for
is
everybody?
fine.
30 minutes for recess and come back with the final chapter.